Today, I want to talk about something that keeps resurfacing in the public conversation: the treatment of Prince Harry, particularly around the issue of his security, his relationship with the royal family, and the ongoing narrative that surrounds him and Meghan. There's been a lot of noise, a lot of speculation, and a lot of headlines that often feel designed to provoke strong opinions without giving viewers the full context they deserve. What I want to do today is slow down, look at the situation as clearly as possible, and talk about why Harry's position deserves more empathy, more fairness, and frankly, more honesty than he's been given by the institutions around him. To begin, let's acknowledge something up front. Prince Harry did not choose the circumstances of his birth. He was born into an environment that few people in the world can truly relate to, an environment where private life is almost non-existent, where personal security is not a luxury but a necessity, and where every action, every movement, and every relationship becomes public property. Unlike most children, Harry's earliest memories were shaped by flashing bulbs, intrusive media attention, and the traumatic loss of his mother under circumstances deeply intertwined with that same media machine. So when we talk about Harry's concerns around safety, privacy, and the protection of his family, we cannot ignore the history that shaped those concerns. What makes the security issue so striking is that it reflects a deeper dynamic, one that Harry himself has spoken about: the tension between individual well-being and institutional priorities. For decades, the monarchy has operated as a system. It has rules, hierarchies, and protocols that do not bend easily. And within that system, people, actual human beings with emotions, fears, and families, often become secondary to the needs of the institution. Harry grew up inside that very system, and over time, he has been vocal about the ways it failed to protect him and the people he loves. Now, let's address the ongoing debate around his security when he is in the United Kingdom. Whether people agree with Harry's decisions or not, it is undeniable that he remains a high-profile individual with documented security threats. This is not an opinion, it is something acknowledged in multiple official contexts. His public visibility, his military service, and the intense media scrutiny surrounding him all contribute to a risk environment that has not magically disappeared just because he stepped back from royal duties. That's why the question of who influences security decisions matters. When media outlets report that representatives of the royal household sit on the committee responsible for evaluating protection, when they imply that palace courtiers may have played a role in prompting a review, this raises legitimate questions about how independent these processes truly are, and it highlights the contradiction between what officials publicly claim and what insiders quietly reveal. Harry's supporters are not imagining these inconsistencies. They are reacting to the information presented by the very outlets that often criticize him. But beyond the technical details, the broader issue is how quickly people forget that Harry is asking for something incredibly reasonable: the ability to keep his wife and children safe when they visit the country he will always consider part of his home. That is not entitlement, that is not political maneuvering, that is parental responsibility. And Harry, more than almost anyone, understands what happens when security fails. He lost his mother to a situation where paparazzi aggression and insufficient protection collided in the worst possible way. Expecting him to ignore that history would be expecting him to ignore the most defining tragedy of his life. Critics often claim that stepping back from royal duties means forfeiting certain privileges, including state-funded security. But that perspective oversimplifies the issue. Security for someone in Harry's position is not about privileges. It is about risk management. His public profile did not evaporate the moment he moved to California. If anything, his willingness to speak openly about his experiences made him an even bigger target for certain groups. It is simply inaccurate to pretend that he became an ordinary private citizen overnight. No amount of geographical distance can erase the visibility he carries or the danger that visibility can bring. Let's also talk about the narrative that Harry chose to leave and therefore must accept the consequences. This argument ignores the countless ways he and Meghan expressed how untenable their situation had become. They faced relentless media hostility, security concerns that were not adequately addressed, and institutional pressures that left them with few real options. Leaving was not a casual decision. It was an act of protection for their mental health, for their children, and for their future. Anyone who has ever removed themselves from a toxic environment should be able to understand that, even if the scale of their circumstances is different. It's also important to consider the dynamic between Harry and the press. For years, he has been at war with sections of the British tabloid media, an environment that often rewards sensationalism over accuracy. These outlets benefit from portraying Harry in a negative light. They profit from controversy and division, and they rarely highlight positive things he does unless forced to. This pattern has existed since his teenage years, and it has only intensified in recent times. Supporting Harry in this context is not about siding with one person against an entire institution. It is about recognizing when narratives are being shaped for profit rather than truth. Now, let's return to the focal point, the role of the royal household and the question of influence. The palace often claims neutrality, stating that neither the king nor his advisors interfere in security decisions. Yet, reports consistently reveal hints that senior courtiers are involved behind the scenes. These two claims cannot both be entirely accurate. When a media outlet suggests that a review was ordered following improved relations between Harry and his father, it becomes difficult to argue that the household is completely hands-off. And when those same sources say that courtiers sit on the committee that evaluates security, it becomes even harder to accept that the palace has no sway at all. It's essential to acknowledge that many royal watchers, commentators, and even ordinary supporters have long believed that such committees tend to follow palace preferences. That is not an accusation of wrongdoing. It is an observation about institutional culture. In environments like this, influence is often subtle rather than explicit. A senior advisor does not need to issue commands. Their presence alone signals priorities. Their suggestions carry weight. Their recommendations are taken seriously. So when the public is told that Harry's security is purely a government matter, the contradiction between official statements and reported actions becomes impossible to ignore. And this contradiction matters for more than just Harry. It speaks to a larger issue of transparency, how decisions about the safety of public figures are made, who has influence, and how much of the process the public is allowed to understand. In a democratic society, institutions work best when they operate with consistency and clarity. When the messaging is inconsistent, it becomes reasonable for people to ask hard questions. Harry's supporters are not being unreasonable when they point out these inconsistencies. They are doing exactly what people should do in any functioning society: hold systems accountable. What's striking about the coverage of Harry is the way his motivations are frequently misrepresented. Take his legal actions against newspapers, for example. These lawsuits are not about revenge or publicity. They are about holding the media accountable for unlawful acts that have since been publicly acknowledged in court. Harry's willingness to take on the press has done more to unveil unethical practices than most public figures have dared to do. Supporting him in this arena is not about idolizing him. It is about recognizing and appreciating efforts to create a more responsible media landscape. Critics often paint him as entitled or self-interested, but the truth is that Harry has been remarkably consistent. He wants fairness, safety, and the ability to tell his story without distortion. He has repeatedly said he would prefer reconciliation with his family. He has openly expressed love for his father and brother, even while acknowledging the pain that exists. This is not the language of someone trying to burn bridges. It is the language of someone trying to heal, someone trying to protect his family, and someone trying to navigate a world that is both deeply personal and intensely public. Harry's story resonates with many people because it mirrors struggles that are universal. Setting boundaries, protecting loved ones, navigating complicated family relationships, and speaking out when systems fail us. The difference is simply the scale of his circumstances. But the emotions, the conflicts, and the motivations are profoundly human. People support him because they recognize sincerity in his actions. They recognize courage in his choices. and they recognize a pattern of institutional behavior that has not always served him fairly. As we look at the current conversation surrounding him, especially around security decisions, it's clear that the issue is not just about logistics. It is about dignity. It is about acknowledging the reality of his situation rather than pretending everything is business as usual. It is about treating him with the same level of concern and fairness that any parent would expect in circumstances involving risk. Regardless of someone's views about the monarchy, this should not be a controversial position. Supporting Harry does not require dismissing the royal family, nor does it require villainizing anyone. It simply means acknowledging that he has a right to protect his family, a right to speak his truth, and a right to challenge systems that have caused harm. It means recognizing the courage it takes to break from tradition, especially when tradition has such a tight grip on public perception. It means understanding that the decisions he makes are rooted in lived experience, trauma, and a deep desire to ensure his children never face the same dangers he once faced. In closing, this conversation is bigger than tabloids, bigger than headlines, and bigger than the noise that surrounds the monarchy. It is about accountability, empathy, and the recognition that Harry deserves safety, respect, and fair treatment. He is not perfect, no one is, but he has shown a willingness to advocate for his family, to challenge unfair systems, and to speak openly about issues most people would shy away from. That deserves acknowledgement. That deserves understanding. And that deserves support. So the next time you hear another headline, another speculation, another attempt to reduce his concerns to mere drama, remember the broader picture. Remember the history, the context, and the reality that he continues to face. And most importantly, remember that behind every title, every headline, and every public statement is a human being trying to protect his family and live with integrity.